Fleming here in the podcast studio at the PPA, and I have a wonderful guest today, Athena Trouillot. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you, and we love to talk to players, but I love to talk to coaches because I love the inside to the game. So let's jump into that part of your life here. As you and your partner, Catherine, on, off, throughout, you guys are tied at the hip. When you have a relationship and you also are the coach, how do you compartmentalize that? Because that can't be easy for you.
Yeah, I think that's something we're still figuring out,
Okay.
Dave. It's interesting because obviously the benefit is I probably know her better than anybody else, right? And then the negative is that we know each other better than everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know how it works. Like with your significant other, there are certain lines or things that you may say because it's your significant other.
Yeah.
You know they're going to be around no matter what. So, maybe you say things you shouldn't. And especially like during tournaments, it's a very high stress environment for all these athletes, And when you're really stressed out, a lot of things become emotional, become cloudy. Who knows? So it's hard, but we just try to make sure that, maybe before you speak, you wait a couple seconds, think about what you're gonna say. But yeah, we're learning. We're trying to figure out how to make it work, and she's been doing pretty well. So I guess we're doing something right.
I don't know that you know the definition of pretty well. She's doing very, very well, obviously, and thanks to you. So let's go back to when you decide. You're a very good player. I've had the pleasure of being on the court with you. You are a very good player, and you had to make the decision of which road you wanted to go, and you took that. Why did you decide and go this way?
Yeah, so this one's kind of interesting because, people ask me all the time, even today, like, oh, like I saw you warming Catherine up. Like, you're actually really good. Like, why are you not playing? And, the answer that I usually give people is that I don't want to play, and they're just shocked. But, even so, I met Catherine in college at Michigan State. We were both on the tennis team there. And Catherine, she was always, passionate about competing. Like, it was like her life. If she wasn't competing, she didn't know what to do, kind of. And that's how pickleball came about. Like, when she stopped playing tennis because she had used up her 4 years of eligibility, like, there was this void. And so when she started playing pickleball, even though it wasn't, professional or anything like that, there were amateur tournaments. Like, it was a way for her to compete again because she grew up competing. She skied, she played baseball, she played tennis. And so that's all she had done. So when tennis was over, it was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? And so pickleball was the outlet for her. For me, I grew up playing tennis, and I was really talented, but I was super lazy. And I didn't, I like my coach had to run after me all the time to do stuff. And I got away with it because I was super talented. And I was really good. I grew up playing tennis in Florida. I was really good from a really young age. And then I played college tennis because that's what you do when you're good,
Of course, why not?
Right. And then I played college tennis, and that was actually the most fun that I had because you got to be on a team.
Yeah.
Like, growing up with tennis, it's individual, and it's hard. Like, you're playing 3-4 tournaments a month, on the USTA, and I liked it, and I liked my friends, but I never loved it and was passionate about it like Catherine. Like, Catherine's like on another level. I make fun of her all the time. I say to her that the reason I was not a professional athlete is because I'm not crazy, and you have to be a little bit crazy to do what she does,
No doubt.
And I could never do it. I just couldn't. I know that about myself. And Catherine, what she does is incredible. And it's because she has like this passion and drive inside of her to do it, and I just don't have that. And so when it came to me deciding, like, I literally started playing because she said she needed a partner. Because back then when she started playing, there were like, there's still a lack of female players. There always has been. But back then she was like, look, like the top 3 teams, they're locked up. They're playing everything together. And I need a partner. Like, you're a good tennis player. You'll be good quick. Like,
Figure it out, Athena. Come on.
I'm like, but I don't really want to play. She's like, I need a partner. You're playing. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm playing. So that's basically how it started. And then we realized, like, how complicated it got playing together. And then Catherine was always much better than me. She started before me, and it would just got so complicated. I was like, look, this thing is growing. like I love the behind the scenes business, like my mind, logical, rational, like that's just how I am. Like this is what I want to do. I want to be able to like grow your brand, grow the CP brand, like figure out ways to like increase our revenue and make a business out of this so we can make a life out of this. And that's just kind of how the decision came about. And so I just started doing everything behind the scenes so that she could just focus on playing and I would do everything else. And I love it and she loves what she does. And so it just works out really well.
Match made in heaven right there, both on and off the court. That's awesome. So your words, not mine, were a lazy player and you were a problem for your coach. So what did you learn about coaching yourself and others that you've taken into coaching Catherine?
Oh, I think the toughest part is that everybody's different. It's like there are, every coach has their philosophy that they use, right? And, you can be a fantastic coach, but you're not a fantastic coach for this particular player.
Right.
And everybody's different. Like in college, for example, like Catherine, our head coach was Simone. And Simone, I mean, you see her when she plays pickleball. She's super intense. Yes. She is at a 10 out of 10 all the time. And I was not like that. And so a lot of the coaching that I had at Michigan State was from our assistant coach. His name's Tyler, and he was more like me. And so I worked really well with Tyler. And Simone was always the one that would lit a fire under my butt and try to get me to, do more. But Catherine loved, like with Tyler, it just didn't work. Like she needed it to be intense and yeah, like I said, kind of light a fire under your butt. So I think the biggest thing that I learned is kind of figuring out what that player needs that works for them, because everybody's so different, So I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned.
Gotcha. So let's walk through the journey of a tournament, because I think people are really interested in understanding. So let's just say we just had Cincinnati. So a week before Cincinnati, what is both the regimen and especially for you, is there video? Is there like, hey, we did well or not well against a player? Talk us through that. I think everyone would be really interested to hear what you guys do.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it really depends on the schedule. Sometimes we have time to do that, and sometimes we don't.
Exactly.
So like for TOC in Kansas City, those were back to back, and so you pretty much have time to do nothing. You have time to mentally recharge, not think about pickleball for hopefully 24 hours, and then when you're done on Catherine, is usually done on Sunday. She's right back at it on Thursday, right? Because she plays singles. Right. So those weeks are a little bit different because you don't have time to do much. You're kind of just mentally recharging and getting ready to do it all over again. Whereas if it's a tournament where you have a longer break, that is when you have time to actually work on stuff, right? And watch film and work on different shots you want to develop, or maybe something's off. You want extra reps on that. So for Cincinnati, for example, I think we had a weekend off right before Cincinnati. So for that one, Catherine will usually drill further away from the tournament so that she can get reps on certain shots that she wants to make sure are in tune, I guess, if you would say. Yeah. And then closer to the tournament is doing more like point style stuff to kind of implement the things that she fine-tuned. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then we'll fly out depending on where it is. We live on the East Coast, so if it's a West Coast tournament, we'll fly out a little bit earlier because the ball is so much different, the environment's different, and then the time change, right?
Sure.
So let's say, we're going to Vegas. Tournament starts on Thursday. We usually will try to get there Sunday or Monday just because we've realized Catherine has a whoop that we use, so we can tell by her recovery scores and everything.
Explain what that is. I do, but many of the viewers may not.
Yeah, so it's basically this band that you wear, but all the information's on your phone, and it tracks your strain, which is your physical activity, and how it affects your body. It tracks your sleep, and it develops a recovery score based on your activity from the previous day and your sleep from the previous night, which basically tells you, look, you can push yourself this much, or maybe take it easy because you had a rough day yesterday, right? So we've been able to learn a lot of stuff from using this. So when we travel to the West Coast, we've learned it takes Catherine about 48 hours before she has a good recovery score again, just from traveling the West Coast. And I think a lot of people don't realize how stressful traveling is and how much of a toll it takes. So we started getting there earlier. We used to get there 2 days before, so Tuesday, but then the 48 hours was Thursday. So she was competing on that day. So we were like, that's not early enough. So then we started getting there Sunday or Monday for West Coast tournaments. And then just getting used to the environment again.
Sure.
So then we'll if the tournament's in Vegas, we'll fly out there Sunday or Monday. And then basically that week, you're not really working on stuff anymore. It's more you're hitting to get used to that different environment, right? And, people might not realize how much of a difference it makes, but like if you play in altitude, like even somebody like Catherine will miss 5 returns a game
Right. For
because
sure.
it's so different.
It's crazy.
Or you'll miss like 6 returns a game or serves a game, right? Because it's so different. So it's basically just like trying to make sure you're getting used to the environment so that by the time Thursday comes around, you're feeling really good. So that's kind of what our schedule looks like before tournaments and then leading up to a tournament.
Love it. And I think, I talk about on the broadcast all the time, and the appreciation and the ability to adapt to all that we play indoors. That's different. We play in altitude, heat versus maybe a little cooler. So
Wind.
The fact that you wind for sure.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're backing up the schedule to give yourself time makes a lot of sense to me. So game day. What's your role? What's her role? Obviously to play, but let's say it's, a singles Thursday, starts, 11, 12 o'clock, first match on. What are you doing to make sure she plays at her best?
So game days, let's say she starts at 12. Usually singles for women start at 12. So she usually has a bye if the draw is not 32. If it's 32, then she'll start at 12. We try to be there an hour and a half before her start time.
Okay.
So if she has a bye, usually we'll consider the start time to be 12:30. If she doesn't have a bye, then the start time's 12.
Sure.
So if she has a bye, we try to be at the facility around 11. So basically in the morning, it's, she packs, snacks and shoes and outfits and things that, kind of seem obvious, but like we literally end up with like 4 bags at the facility because we have to bring so much, right? There's obviously making sure that she gets a great breakfast, which is really important just because throughout the day, you don't know exactly what your schedule is going to be, right? So a lot of the times you're snacking, you can't have a full meal, right?
So define a great breakfast. I'm sure a lot of people would love to know.
Yeah, so recently we've actually been trying to increase her protein intake.
Okay.
We've kind of been getting a little bit more serious about nutrition. And we're trying to figure out, like, again, similar to what I was talking about earlier, like every human being is different.
Sure.
So something that works for her might not be great for somebody else, right? For her, it includes usually eggs. She's gluten-free now, which is interesting.
Okay.
So eggs, like an avocado, some type of fat, good fat. And then maybe like gluten-free bread and like maybe like a yogurt. We're trying to get, as much food in her system as we can. Usually we have to force it down because she doesn't want to eat, But it's the time of the day where she's going to be able to eat the most because after that, we don't know what's going to happen, right? Obviously, we have sort of an idea of what it's going to look like. But it's the best time to get as much food in her system to kind of fuel her body for the strain she's about to put on for the rest of the day. And then obviously there's like recovery stuff. So we travel with boots, compression boots, and then, we'll do like ice baths, or if there's a tub at the Airbnb that we stay at, we'll do some hot tub, things like that. So if we need to be at the facility at 11, I'd say we're probably up by like 7:38, pretty early. And then during game day, basically, it's making sure that we're tracking matches so that we know when she's about to go on, so that she's warming up at the proper times.
What is the proper time?
Yeah, so the goal is she usually warms up physically with the performance course. I'm sure you know Connor.
Yeah, of course.
And she
say a little bit about that.
So I would say October of last year, we decided to start. I mean, she used to, work out, but it wasn't pickleball specific training, right? It was, you know, I'm going to do cardio, make sure I'm in good shape. Maybe I do a Peloton class, or maybe I do Orange Theory or whatever it may be, like what the, you know, average person would do for fitness, right? Which we started to realize, like, if we want her to be elite, that's not enough anymore, right? So we started looking into personal training, and we met Connor, and
give his full name so we give
Connor
some love out there.
Derrickson,
Yes. Derrickson, not Erickson. Yes.
Derrickson, and yeah, I mean, it's been really great because we've kind of been able to develop this routine at tournaments where she has, you know, physically will warm up for about 15 minutes before she even touches a paddle, and then the goal is if she can hit for about 20 to 30 minutes before her first match starts. So for a total, I guess, of around 45 minutes to an hour. That's the goal. But then, you know, it's figuring out, like, when is this match going to start, right? Sometimes you end up having to warm up more than once because the match goes longer than you thought. Because pickleball matches are quick. Like, if you start the match and you're flat or you're not warmed up, like, you'll lose a game quick. So it's basically, you know, making sure that she's prepared and ready from the first point of the match, so that we don't end up in a scenario where she's kind of, you know, using more energy than we need her to, right? If you don't have to drop a game, you don't want to drop a game, because she's playing 3-4 matches every single day for 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row, right? So yeah, I would say it's a team effort. You know, Connor and I usually on the road, we're trying to do as much as we can, again, to make sure she has to do as little as she needs to, right? So that her only focus is, I know when I'm going to warm up, I know when I have to eat or eat my snacks or get warmed up, whatever it may be. And then we try to do, you know, everything else. So, like, filling up the bottles, making sure she has electrolytes. It's like little things that you don't think about, right? Placing a DoorDash order, because we can't leave the facility. Like, if there's a, you know, certain, we know we have 2 hours, we'll get her, like, a larger meal for that 2-hour break or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's little things
that all matter. So as you're moving through a draw, as the coach, just put your coach, not all these 1,000 other things you're doing. Is there a game plan every time? And is it you and Catherine sitting down? Walk me through sort of that. You know, we're into the semifinal. We're playing a very good player. Have we thought about that beforehand in case we run into this person? Walk us through that thinking.
So this one's interesting. So I'll give you Cincinnati as an example.
Okay,
right?
great.
Her singles semi. Well, the women's singles draw, you know, there's 5 people that pulled out, right?
It was an interesting draw this week for sure.
So her first round, she's playing somebody we've never seen before, right? And what's interesting about this is that they all know Catherine.
Of course.
And they watch film on Catherine, and they know how Catherine plays. But we don't know this player, right? We know nothing about the player. And so these matches are more difficult because you can't plan as well, right? I mean, you basically at that point want to, like, focus on your strengths, what you're good at, and then as the match progresses, hopefully figure out, like, patterns and, okay, maybe this is a little bit better than this or whatever it may be. And even, I can't remember who she played in the second round, but her semi, she played against Rachel.
Yeah, Rohrabacher, yes.
Who was a great player.
Yes.
And I had never seen her play one singles point.
Okay. And
this is Catherine's semi. And of course, there were, I think Rachel, like, got to the quarters and didn't play a match or something because there were so many withdrawals. But she was a good player. And Catherine lost that first game.
Yeah.
And, like, sometimes when you're playing a player who's brand new, who you have zero film on, you have no idea what to expect. Like, it takes a little while to figure out, like, what am I supposed to do, right? So I think she lost the first game and then won the next 2.
Yes.
So there's that scenario, right?
So what are you doing in that situation? Because this is a place, it seems like, where we got to get a lot of information in a hurry.
Yep.
And are you saying I'm seeing X shot, or how's that with a brand new or a relative up and comer who is a very good player?
Yeah. So in that scenario, throughout the entire first game, my goal is Catherine. I need her to hit every shot. I need to see everything.
Okay.
If you do the same thing over and over again and we don't see her forehand, or we don't see her backhand, or we don't see her come forward to the net, or we don't see, how are we supposed to know what is going to work and what's not? So we need to try different things at first to be able to see what works and what doesn't, right? So I think that's always the best strategy, especially when you're playing against somebody you've never played. Make a ton of balls and make them do everything.
And then see what's good and what isn't.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
And I think that did happen in the Rachel match. I think Catherine, I don't remember if it was I think it was a forehand. Maybe she kept going to her forehand, and Rachel had a really good forehand. I'm like, I haven't even seen her backhand once. I'm like, can you go to the backhand? She's like, oh, okay, yeah, good point. So yeah, like when she calls a timeout, you know, she gets to a game, and it's like little things like that where we're like kind of, I guess, trying to figure it out together. And it's hard, you know, for her in the moment when she's playing that game to figure it out, because she's high stress, emotional, and like is not thinking as I would be on the sideline, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of, I guess, what it looked like.
So that's an unknown. If that's somebody she's played a bunch of times, a Leah Jansen, a Anna Leigh Waters, one of these that there's, you know, 25 matchups.
Yeah.
How is that different for you as the coach?
Yeah, so if it's somebody that you've played before and you've played them a lot, it's easier because you kind of know what to expect, right? So I'll give you an example. She played... Leah hasn't been playing, so she hasn't played Leah in a while. I think the last time she played Leah might have been Daytona in that final.
Okay.
So it's been a while since she's played Leah. But Salome, that's another.
Yeah,
who's
okay,
a
there's
top
a good
singles
one.
player,
Yeah, for
pretty
sure.
good.
Very good.
So she played her in the final of TOC, and she won that one. And so, I guess in that scenario, you have a strategy that you kind of execute, and maybe you don't touch it till it doesn't work.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
Don't fix something that's not broken.
Exactly right.
And then
so when is that strategy hatched? Is that already done going into the tournament? What does she have that she's taking to TOC?
So that strategies like that against players we know she's very likely to play often are hatched, beforehand. We watch film, we take notes, and then during tournaments, it's more about like reminding her what those are, right?
And reminders are through, excuse me, interrupt, but the details here are so fascinating. Yeah. Are we looking at a couple of clips, or do we have notes somewhere?
Notes,
Okay. Gotcha.
And those are written out beforehand. And so it literally, we've already gone over it. It's more about kind of like triggering it in her head and being like, okay, I remember we talked about this. This is what the game plan is, right? Anna Leigh's obviously a different situation. She's played it like a million times. Right. And with Anna Leigh, I mean, it's basically just like finding out like what, you know, she's beaten her once in March. Anna Leigh adjusted very well. And now it's just figuring out like what is a different pattern or strategy that we can come up with and try to see if it works, right? And every time she plays Anna Leigh, there's a different strategy or pattern that we try to come up with to try to see if she can execute, right? So yeah, it's interesting, it's fascinating, and they're fun. You know, it's really fun.
It's a puzzle.
Yeah.
So. Singles day, obviously very different. Doubles, played a lot with Anna Leigh Waters. When I'm in the booth, I see them call timeout. Maybe they're down 6-4 or something, maybe a little frustrated point. And I comment as I watch. Anna Leigh goes over and talks to Leigh Waters. Catherine comes over and talks to you. You got to play a lot of roles over there, don't you? Walk through what's required in a doubles match so that the players get what they need but then can come together.
Yeah, so, you know, Leigh and I guess in the Catherine and Anna Leigh situation, Leigh and I are always on the bench together, and we're communicating the whole time. Right? Okay. So her and I are on the same page about what needs to be done and what shouldn't happen. Strategically, okay. Right, yeah. And we're talking the whole time, like, oh, did you notice this? Oh, I think we need to do more of this. So her and I are on the same page. So when the girls, will come to us on a timeout, let's say they're down, right? We don't necessarily need to speak to them at the same time, right? Sometimes maybe Catherine's very frustrated because she just made 2 unforced errors and she's really pissed, right? And Leigh knows, like, Athena needs to talk to Catherine and calm her down for 15 seconds before we come together and talk about what we need to change, right? So Lee, and sometimes that happens with Anna Lee, right? If Anna Lee hits 2 unforced errors in a row and she's pissed, and Lee knows she's pissed, and I know she's pissed, I'm going to give him space for 20, 30 seconds so Anna Lee can just vent, right? And say, I'm pissed, I just missed 2 shots I shouldn't have missed, right? And so I just think we've known the Waters for a really long time, and we're really good friends off the court, and I think that kind of helps because we know them so well. Yeah. Like, I can tell when Anna Lee's pissed, you know? And so it kind of helps because it helps us navigate them together on the timeouts during matches, you know? And then obviously, since Lee and I are on the same page, I'm telling Catherine something and Lee's saying the same thing to Anna Lee, right? So then when they go back on the court, they're on the same page because we were on the same page, right? And sometimes it happens together, you know, like sometimes, you know, we'll talk and the 4 of us, you can all hear each other. It just depends on the situation. But it's crazy because on the court, a lot of it is emotional, you know? Again, high stress environment. Like, they basically are in a position where they have to try to turn off their emotions, right? Because you want to try to act rationally, and that's not always easy, right? But yeah, we try to help them as best as we can. But at the end of the day, you know, what they do is incredible. And the reason that they're so good at it is because not many people can do that, right?
No doubt.
But yeah.
No, that's very interesting to sort of understand. There's 4 human beings, and how do we all sort that out? So that's great insight. Thanks for that. So how then, there's been multiple championship Sundays where they have played together, they have won, and then they're frenemies because, in fact, Cincinnati is an example of that. So are we giving everything to Lee, or, you know, how do you navigate? Now suddenly I have to coach against Lee. I have to try and beat our
doubles.
partner. Yes, from doubles to singles.
Yeah. Oh, from doubles to singles. Yes. Yeah. So I guess that helps, though, because those strategies are different.
Yeah.
You know, there's a mutual respect that you know, we don't talk too much about singles, right?
Sure.
Obviously, they're competitors and they're friends and partners. But I think there's also a mutual respect and understanding that, you know, when we're playing singles and you're on the other side of the court, like, I'm going to do what I can to win.
Sure.
And if you win, congratulations, but I don't want you to win, right?
Of course not. Yeah.
And like, it's happened before, like, you know, when Anna Lee beats Catherine or Catherine beat Anna Lee in Daytona, I mean, like, they're pissed for like a decent amount of time, like any human being would be, you know. But yeah, and actually that tournament they played together that next one. Because the way that it happens this time, usually they'll play doubles on Saturday together. They'll play women's doubles on Sunday before they play singles, hopefully.
Yes.
And then they play each other, and then it's over, right? Right. Whereas in Daytona, it was kind of weird because Catherine played Anna Lee in the semi, which is rare. Right. And then they had to play together 2 days later at Saturday. But it's just a mutual respect and understanding, like, look, like, you're a great player. Like, I love you off the court. I don't want you to win, but, like, I'll get over it, you know? kind of thing.
I mean, we're not both winning in singles. So we had to get this sorted out. That's interesting. Last question for you, and this is fantastic. Thanks for getting inside your pickleball mind there. We're seeing more and more coaches out on the court. We're seeing some of the senior pros hop out there. We're seeing siblings, friends. We see a lot of the players, whoever they're closest to, jumping out there and helping. Where do you see this coaching thing going? And do you expect us at some point to have a coach on every bench because it's going to be that much of a requirement because the margins are so thin?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, you know, in pickleball, coaching has always been allowed on timeouts, right?
Right.
And in tennis for a long time, it was not allowed at all.
Correct.
And now it is, which I find so interesting. Yeah. Like, I was watching the U.S. Open, it's like people were talking to them in the middle of games, like talking strategy in the middle of games. And I thought, like, it's good, but it can also be too much, you know? And I think about that sometimes. You've asked me this before. Like, sometimes I'm on Catherine's bench and sometimes I'm not, you know? Because at the end of the day, like, sometimes she needs to figure it out on her own. You know what I'm saying? Like, and feel like, have that autonomy, like, I can figure this out. Mm-hmm. Instead of having so much dependence. You know what I'm saying?
No, that makes a lot of sense, yeah.
And you don't want to overwhelm them either, you know? And so what does the future look like? I think if it's allowed, you're going to start seeing it more and more.
Okay.
Obviously, there's a huge advantage, but then there's also like trying to find a balance, because I think it's possible for there to be too much of it, you know? Like even in certain singles matches, like sometimes I'll come on the first time out and the next time out, I'm just like, look, she needs to like figure it out, right? And calm down or whatever it may be. So I'm curious, like if it continues to be allowed, maybe there's a rule that comes up a certain amount of time, maybe it's not allowed anymore. I don't know. My personal opinion is, I mean, obviously we take advantage of the fact that it's allowed right now, but I don't know if it should be allowed.
Okay.
Like I feel like maybe the athletes should be able to figure it out on their own. Like that's how it was in tennis for such a long time. Obviously pickleball's different. But I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. If it continues to be allowed, you will see it more and more, because I think there's a huge advantage to it. There's a lot of things that somebody who is off the court may be able to see that you couldn't see yourself because you're in the match, right?
Sure.
But if it's not allowed, then, you know, then it gets really hard for the players.
Well, then all that prep is so critical then.
Yeah. So it'll be really interesting. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. But right now, we're going to take advantage of it.
And you're doing it well. So what a great conversation, Athena. Thanks so much for being in here to help us understand all the things that you do to help your partner on and off the court be successful. So thanks for taking some time.
Thank you.
For Athena Trouillot, I'm Dave Fleming. Thanks for tuning in. So much fun. We're going to keep bringing great people here to the PPA Podcast studio.